Hello dear listener, please subscribe to our channel. Enjoy watching. They say that art imitates life, but in my case, life imitated art with a terrifying precision. It all started with a simple shift. A whisper in the quiet of our once perfect marriage. I never saw it coming. Never imagined my world would fall apart in such a brutal, unrecognizable way. But in the end, that's how it always happens, right? It's funny how betrayal works. It's subtle at first, an offhand comment, a missed touch, a fleeting glance at the clock as if time's running out. Then the cracks begin to widen. And when you least expect it, your entire existence is split open, exposing the raw, gaping wound of lies. My name's David. I'm an artist. Not the kind that makes quick bucks with trendy landscapes or endless portraits. No, I paint with a depth that takes years to refine, struggle, passion, the kind of work that makes you question everything about your existence. Claire, my wife, was my greatest muse. My inspiration. She was the woman I had dreamed about for years. Stunning, intelligent, strong-willed. We'd met when she was still an art critic and I was a struggling artist, just trying to make a name for myself. She saw potential in me, in my work, and we'd spent years building something beautiful together. At least, I thought we had. I suppose, in hindsight, I should have noticed the signs sooner. The way Claire had started to retreat into herself, becoming distant over the last few months. She'd become cold, not just emotionally, but physically. She'd go out more often, leave earlier in the mornings, and spend hours at her gallery, late into the night. Always telling me she was working, meeting clients, or researching artists for her upcoming shows. It was all perfectly plausible. Until one night, I noticed something that threw me into a spiral I couldn't escape. I was in my studio, finishing a painting I'd been working on for weeks. The deep crimson hues of the piece reflected my frustration, my confusion, my growing suspicion. As I wiped the sweat from my brow, I heard Claire's phone buzz on the kitchen counter. I'd never been one to pry, never looked through her messages or checked her emails. That was one of the unspoken rules of our relationship, trust. But for some reason, in that moment, I felt the pull to look. I don't know what drove me, whether it was a gut instinct or something deeper, but I found myself walking toward the counter, my heart pounding in my chest. There was a message from someone named Andrew. I can't wait to see you tonight, Claire. I think about you every second. We'll be together soon, I promise. I froze. I couldn't breathe. My mind was racing, but nothing seemed to make sense. Andrew? Who the hell was Andrew? My hands trembled as I placed the phone back, my heart thudding in my ears. I stood there for a long time, staring at the phone as if it held all the answers to a question I had never asked. But I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know what this was. The messages weren't just innocent. They were intimate. Passionate. I'd seen enough to know that. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake for hours, thoughts circling, consuming me. The image of Claire with someone else, someone I didn't even know, tore through me like a jagged knife. The worst part was the self-doubt. Could I have missed it all? Was I blind? Or had she been hiding something from me for longer than I could imagine? The next morning, I confronted her. We were sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, and I just blurted it out. Who's Andrew? Her face went white. For a split second, I saw the mask slip, the practiced calmness, the perfect wife facade, before she quickly recovered, smiling weakly. David, what are you talking about? I showed her the message. The silence between us stretched, suffocating. She stood up, clutching the counter, her eyes wide, lips trembling. David, you have to believe me, she said, voice barely a whisper. It's not what you think. But I knew. I knew before she even spoke. I didn't need her to explain herself. I didn't need her to deny it. The truth was already in front of me, stark and undeniable. The walls had come crashing down. I stood up, my legs weak beneath me. I want the truth. Now. She broke down, sobbing. She told me everything. The affair had started months ago, when she met Andrew at a gallery opening. He was a wealthy collector, sophisticated, and charming, everything I wasn't. She'd fallen for him the way a person falls for a drug, quickly, completely, and without thought. She said it started innocently enough, but then things had escalated. And now she was planning to leave me. To leave our home, our life, and everything we'd built together. The coldness in her eyes when she said it, the finality of it all, was enough to leave me hollow. There was no way back from this. No second chances. She had already made up her mind. But I couldn't let her go just yet. No, I couldn't let her, or Andrew, think they could destroy everything I'd worked for without consequence. That's when the plan began to take shape. For weeks, I kept up the appearance of a broken husband. I let Claire believe that I was crushed, that I was lost without her. I spent hours in my studio, alone, painting, staring at the canvas as if I could somehow pour all my grief and rage into my work. But I wasn't just lost, I was plotting. I'd always been a patient man. An artist. And art, true art, takes time. I realized that if I was going to get revenge, I had to think like an artist. And revenge, like art, had to be beautiful. It had to be precise. It had to be a masterpiece. I started with the paintings. I created a series of pieces, each one more elaborate than the last. These weren't just ordinary paintings, they were psychological portraits of Claire. I painted her as I saw her, a woman consumed by desire and vanity, her facade of grace and elegance crumbling beneath the weight of her betrayal. I used my technique to capture the raw emotions, anger, betrayal, confusion, and painted them onto the canvas in vivid, chaotic strokes. But in every one of these paintings, there was something Claire didn't see. Something subtle, something that only she would recognize. Each portrait contained an intimate detail, a reflection of her affair with Andrew. A stolen glance, a hidden embrace, a tender moment between them. But I didn't stop there. I made sure every piece was more successful than the last, each one more famous, more coveted by collectors. Claire was completely unaware of my plan as she continued with her life, oblivious to the fact that her entire world was about to implode. Months passed. My paintings began to sell for tens of thousands of dollars. The gallery owners were clamoring to show my work. The art world was eating it up. I was a success. And Claire? She was getting exactly what she wanted. Fame, recognition, the satisfaction of seeing me fade into the background. But she had no idea that I was using her own ego to destroy her. The final act came at her gallery's annual exhibition. This was going to be the night. The night I unveiled my true masterpiece. The invitation went out weeks in advance, a retrospective of Claire's work, with special guest artist David Harper. The irony was delicious. The gallery was packed with the elite of the art world, critics, collectors, artists. I watched from the back, my heart pounding as Claire smiled and greeted everyone, oblivious to the bomb I was about to drop. I stepped forward, making my way to the center of the room, where the curtain covering the final piece stood. Claire, as always, was the center of attention, her eyes gleaming with pride. She didn't see me until it was too late. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying across the room. "I'd like to introduce you to the latest addition to my collection, The Fall of the Artist." I pulled back the curtain, revealing the most stunning and devastating piece I'd ever created. It was a portrait of Claire, naked, exposed, caught in the act of her betrayal. The look of shock on her face was captured in such detail that it could have been mistaken for a photograph. The image of her and Andrew was there, clear as day, every detail exposed. Her shame, her vanity, her lies, all immortalized. The room fell silent. Claire gasped, her face draining of color. The collectors began murmuring, some in shock, others in awe. But the worst was yet to come. The final stroke of my revenge was the video I'd secretly recorded over the past few months. A hidden camera had captured every whispered conversation, every stolen moment between Claire and Andrew. I played the video. It showed her confessing her affair, planning to leave me for Andrew, laughing as she discussed how she'd manipulate me into signing away everything. The audience watched, captivated. Claire's world came crashing down around her, piece by piece. As she tried to flee, I stepped forward, my final words cutting through the silence. This is what happens when you betray not just your husband, but the art of trust. The art world never recovered from that night. Neither did Claire or Andrew. Both were left with nothing, no career, no reputation. No dignity. They were destroyed. And I walked away from it all, my masterpiece complete. But sometimes, I wonder, did I get my revenge? Or was I just another part of the art, a fleeting brushstroke in their ruined lives? Either way, it didn't matter. In the end, the art of deception was mine. If you leave a comment, tell us what you think about the story you heard. It's important to us and will help us find and tell stories that you find interesting. Thank you for watching us.